The beginning of an unexpected journey. Lila Carter wiped her hands on her apron. The soft hum of the evening rush at Lila's cafe serving as a comforting backdrop to her thoughts. For the past 5 years, this cozy cafe in the heart of Santa Monica had been more than just a workplace. It had been her refuge, her second home. The wooden tables, worn from years of conversation and laughter, the handwritten menu chalkboard, and the warm scent of coffee and fresh pastries wrapped around her like a familiar embrace. Lila had poured her heart into this place, learning every regular's favorite dish and becoming a trusted confidant for the patrons who frequented the cafe. That evening, as she moved effortlessly between the tables, balancing plates of steaming food and refilling cups of coffee, the door jingled. Glancing up, her heart skipped a beat. Jason Statham, the legendary action star whose name alone sent whispers rippling through the room, had just walked in. He wore a simple black hoodie and jeans, his unassuming attire doing little to mask his magnetic presence. The cafe fell silent for a moment before erupting in murmurs. Lila inhaled sharply, her mind racing as she approached his table. She had seen countless celebrities on TV, but meeting one in person, especially someone like Jason, was surreal. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice calm despite the butterflies in her stomach. "What can I get for you tonight?" Jason looked up, his intense gaze softening into a polite smile. "Just a coffee black, and maybe a slice of apple pie if you have it." She nodded, her usual confidence returning. "Coming right up." As she walked to the counter, she could feel the weight of the room's stares. Some customers whispered excitedly, stealing glances at Jason, while others, like Victor Hale, a regular known for his sharp tongue, seemed less impressed. Lila ignored them, focusing instead on preparing Jason's order. But as she returned to his table, a tense hush fell over the cafe. Victor stood, his booming voice cutting through the chatter. "Well, look who it is. Jason Statham, the big Hollywood hero." Jason glanced up, his expression unreadable. "Yes, that's me." Victor scoffed, crossing his arms. "Heroes on screen, huh? Do you actually do for people in the real world? Or is all that charity work just for show?" The cafe grew quiet, the air thick with tension. Lila's pulse quickened. She saw the flicker of discomfort in Jason's eyes, but also noticed how he remained calm. "I try to help where I can," Jason said quietly. "I support causes that matter to me." Victor chuckled bitterly. "Sounds like a PR stunt to me." Something inside Lila snapped. She couldn't stand by and let this man belittle someone who had done so much good. Summoning her courage, she stepped forward. "That's not fair," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the silence. "Jason Statham has funded programs for underprivileged kids and supported veterans. You don't know what he's done behind the scenes." Victor's eyes narrowed. "You really believe that?" "Yes, I do," Lila shot back, "because actions speak louder than words. It's easy to criticize from the sidelines, but he's actually making a difference." The cafe remained silent as Victor huffed and sat back down, his indignation deflated. But Lila's victory was short-lived. From the corner of her eye, She saw Simon Drake, the cafe's owner, step out from the back, his face dark with disapproval. "Lila," Simon said, motioning her over. Her stomach dropped as she approached him, her hands trembling. "Yes, Mr. Drake?" "What were you thinking?" he demanded in a low voice. "You don't argue with customers, especially not regulars like Victor." "I wasn't arguing," she protested. "I was standing up for someone who didn't deserve to be treated that way." Simon shook his head, his expression cold. "This is a business, not a debate club. Victor and the regulars keep this place running. I can't afford to lose them." He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry, Lila. You're fired." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her throat tightened as she fought back tears. "You're firing me for defending someone?" "It's not personal," Simon said, avoiding her gaze. "You can collect your final paycheck tomorrow." That night, Lila lay awake, her mind replaying the events of the evening. Lila's cafe had been her safe haven for years, and now it felt like her world was crumbling. She tried to remind herself that she had done the right thing, but the sting of betrayal lingered. As dawn broke, she resolved to face Simon one last time and collect her paycheck, though the thought filled her with dread. When she arrived at the cafe, a sleek black SUV was parked outside. Pushing open the door, she froze. Jason Statham was sitting in a booth, his presence commanding as ever. He stood when he saw her, his expression warm but serious. "Lila," he said, his voice steady, "can we talk? What would you have done in Lila's situation? Would you risk everything to stand up for what's right? Share your thoughts in the comments below." The cafe seemed to exhale as Jason's words hung in the air, his offer reverberating in Lila's mind. She held the business card tightly, the simple black and white lettering feeling heavier than it should. For years, she had been stuck in a routine, her life defined by small gestures and quiet sacrifices. And now, here was someone, a stranger, yet not, asking her to step into a world she had never imagined for herself. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "Why me? There must be so many people more qualified for this than I am." Jason's gaze softened, and he took a step closer. "Because courage and integrity aren't qualifications you find on a resume, Leela. They're part of who you are. I saw it that night in the cafe. You stood up for me when you didn't have to, when it would have been easier to stay silent. That's exactly the kind of person we need." Her throat tightened as emotion surged within her. She wanted to believe him, to accept that she was more than just a waitress from a small cafe. But doubt lingered, whispering that this was too good to be true. "What if I can't do it?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "What if I fail?" Jason smiled, his confidence in her unshakable. "You won't. But even if you stumble, we'll figure it out together. No one succeeds alone, Lila. You've been helping people in your own way for years. It's time to take that to the next level." Her heart pounded as his words sunk in. She glanced at the card again, the name of the foundation, the Phoenix Initiative, glinting under the cafe's soft lighting. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." The next week flew by in a blur. Leaving the cafe felt like closing a chapter of her life, one filled with both comfort and limitations. Now she was stepping into uncharted territory, trading familiarity for the unknown. The Phoenix Initiative's sleek downtown office was a world apart from the cozy chaos of the cafe. Glass walls and modern furniture reflected the organization's mission of innovation and hope. From the moment she walked in, the team welcomed her with open arms. Their warmth and enthusiasm quickly eased her nerves, and she began to see the impact of their work firsthand. They weren't just helping people, they were transforming lives, giving a voice to the unheard and hope to the forgotten. Jason was deeply involved in every project, his hands-on approach surprising her. He didn't just oversee the work. He was in the trenches, meeting with community leaders, listening to people's stories, and finding solutions to complex problems. Watching him, Lila began to understand why he had fought so hard to build this foundation. It wasn't about fame or public image. It was about purpose. One afternoon, as they visited a local community center funded by the foundation, Jason pulled Lila aside. The air buzzed with the laughter of children playing in the background, their joy a stark contrast to the struggles they faced outside these walls. "I need to tell you something," Jason said, his tone serious. Lila's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" He hesitated for a moment, then said, "That day at the cafe, I wasn't there just for coffee. I was scouting places to support. Lila's Cafe is in a neighborhood that's been hit hard by rising rents and failing businesses. I wanted to see if it was worth investing in." Her eyes widened. You, you were planning to help the cafe?" Jason nodded. "Sometimes the best investments aren't in big corporations. They're in people. People like you." Emotion welled up in her chest, and she struggled to find her voice. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "I thought I lost everything that night, and now—" "You've gained so much more," Jason said, his voice steady. "And this is just the beginning." As the weeks passed, Lila found herself thriving in her new role. She discovered talent she never knew she had, from organizing community events to connecting with donors and volunteers. She was no longer just serving coffee. She was serving a cause. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Even the cafe had been given new life. Thanks to Jason's investment, it had been transformed into a community hub, a place where people could gather not just for food, but for hope and support. The neon sign outside had been restored, glowing brightly as a beacon of possibility. One day, as Lila stood outside the cafe, a familiar voice called her name. Turning, she saw Victor Hale, his usual bluster replaced with an almost sheepish demeanor. "Lila," he said, hesitating, I was wrong about you and about Jason. I owe you an apology." She studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. "Everyone deserves a chance to learn," she said simply. Victor nodded, his gratitude evident. "Thanks for setting me straight." Later that night, as Lila sat on her balcony overlooking the city, she couldn't help but reflect on how much her life had changed. It all felt surreal, like she had stepped into someone else's story. But deep down, she knew she had earned this. By standing up for what she believed in, she had set in motion a chain of events that had reshaped not only her life, but the lives of countless others. Jason's words from that first day echoed in her mind. Actions speak louder than words. He had been right, and now she was living proof of it. The sun dipped low over Santa Monica, casting long golden rays across the city as Lila stood outside the Phoenix Initiative's office. Her thoughts were a tangled web of gratitude, determination, and uncertainty. Every step of her journey so far had been a leap into the unknown, but tonight felt different. Tonight, she would attend the Foundation's annual gala, a celebration of all they had accomplished and a chance for her to see how far she had come. As she walked into the grand ballroom, the hum of conversations and clinking glasses filled the air. The space was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft light on elegantly dressed guests, mingling and laughing. Yet, amidst the glamour, Lila couldn't shake a lingering doubt. She had spent weeks immersing herself in the Foundation's mission, helping those in need and finding her own voice, but she still felt like an outsider in this world of wealth and influence. Jason spotted her from across the room and made his way over, his confident stride cutting through the crowd. He smiled warmly, his presence grounding her. "Lila," he said, his voice low, "you look nervous." She managed a small laugh. "Is it that obvious?" He tilted his head, studying her. "You don't give yourself enough credit. Look around. None of this would have been possible without you." Heart swelled, but she shook her head. "I'm just one piece of the puzzle. You're the one who made all of this happen." Jason's expression softened. "You're wrong. This foundation isn't just about me. It's about people like you. People who believe in making a difference no matter the odds." Lila opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the lights dimmed and a hush fell over the room. Jason stepped away, taking the stage as the evening's keynote speaker. His voice filled the ballroom, steady and commanding. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the milestones we've reached, but the people who made them possible. Every project, every life changed, started with someone who believed in doing the right thing." As he spoke, Lila's chest tightened with emotion. She thought of the children they had helped, the struggling families they had lifted up, and the cafe that had become a beacon of hope. Jason's words resonated deeply, and for the first time she began to see herself not as a bystander, but as a vital part of something greater. After his speech, Jason returned to her side, his eyes shining with pride. "There's one more thing," he said, his tone light but meaningful. "Come with me." Curious, Lila followed him as he led her outside to a quieter balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool, the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore adding to the serenity of the moment. Jason reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, handing it to her. "What's this?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "Open it," he said simply. With trembling hands, Lila unfolded the envelope, revealing a check. Her breath caught as she read the amount, enough to pay off her student loans and secure her future. Tears sprang to her eyes as she looked up at Jason, unable to speak. "You earned this," he said gently. "It's not just about the money, Lila. It's about recognizing everything you've done. You've given so much of yourself to this cause, and now it's time for you to have a fresh start." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "Jason, I can't accept this. It's too much." He smiled, his gaze steady. "It's not just a gift. It's an investment in you. You've proven that you have the heart and the courage to make a difference, and I want to make sure you have everything you need to keep doing that." The moment was interrupted by the sound of her phone buzzing. She hesitated, pulling it from her pocket to see an unknown number flashing on the screen. Her stomach turned as she answered. "Hello? Lila Carter?" a deep voice asked. "Yes, who is this?" "My name's Victor Hale," the voice said, low and urgent. "I need to talk to you about Jason Statham." Her heart skipped a beat. "What about him?" Victor's voice tightened. "There's more to his story than you know. Meet me at the old Harbor Point Pier tonight. Alone." The line went dead before she could respond. She stared at her phone, her mind racing. Jason watched her closely. Something wrong? She hesitated, torn between her trust in Jason and the unsettling call she had just received. "It's nothing," she said finally, tucking her phone away. "I just need some air." Later that night, Lila found herself standing at Harbor Point Pier, the wooden beams creaking under her feet as waves crashed below. The air was thick with tension, and her breath misted in the cold. Suddenly, Victor emerged from the shadows, his face pale and drawn. "You came," he said, his voice tense. "What is this about, Victor?" Lila demanded. "What do you know about Jason?" Victor handed her a folder. "See for yourself." She opened it, her eyes scanning the documents, financial records, property transfers, names connected to the foundation. Her own name stared back at her, circled in bold ink. "This can't be true," she whispered. Victor's voice was cold. "Jason's foundation isn't what you think. It's a front for laundering money. He finds people like you in desperate situations and uses them to cover his tracks." Lila's head spun, the ground beneath her feeling unsteady. "Why should I believe you?" Victor stepped closer, his expression dark. "Because I was in your shoes once. I trusted him too, and it cost me everything." The next morning, Lila confronted Jason in his office, the folder clutched in her trembling hands. He looked up, his expression hardening as he saw the papers. "Where did you get these?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Is it true?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "Did you use me?" Jason leaned back in his chair, his gaze unreadable. "You don't understand the full picture." "Then explain it to me," she cried, her voice rising. He sighed, his tone softening. "Yes, the foundation isn't perfect. The money might not always be clean, but the results are real. We help people, Lila. That's what matters." Tears streamed down her face. "You think that justifies it? You lied to me." Jason's expression hardened. "The world isn't black and white, Lila. Sometimes you have to play dirty to do good." In the days that followed, Lila wrestled with her conscience. The foundation had done so much good, but at what cost? Could she stand by and let it continue, knowing the truth? Or was there another way? At the gala's conclusion, Jason stood before the press, addressing the revelations head-on. Mistakes were made, he admitted, but our mission remains unchanged. We will rebuild, stronger and more transparent than ever. Lila watched from the sidelines, her heart heavy but resolute. Jason approached her afterward, his voice soft. "You could have walked away. Why didn't you?" She met his gaze, her resolve clear. "Because sometimes the right thing isn't easy, but it's always worth it." As they stood together under the city's bright lights, Lila realized that her journey was far from over. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a force for change. And for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a little hope today. And don't forget to comment below. What would you have done in Lila's shoes? The end.